let's have a look at this question. It's question 1 taken from week 1. And we're going to look at some of the business concepts that we've been learning about. The question starts, a manufacturer of scientific calculators sells calculators for $12 Canadian each and can produce a maximum of 150,000 calculators. The variable cost of producing X thousand calculators is 6,995X minus 7.2X squared Canadian, and the fixed costs for the manufacturing operation are $230,000 Canadian. Okay, so we have a couple of concepts here. We have the idea of selling something, and we're selling something at 12 Canadian each. And that selling concept is your revenue. And then we're looking at costs, and here we have two costs. We have a variable cost, and we also have fixed costs. And those things together make up the total cost to manufacture these calculators. So we have cost. And later on in the question, I think, we have if X thousand calculators are manufactured and sold, find expressions or equations for revenue, cost, and profit. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got. We've already underlined 12 Canadian dollars, and that's linked to selling, so that's going to be your revenue. We have the variable cost here, and we have the fixed cost here. Okay, so if we're going to make an expression for revenue at sum X is going to equal, now here we have something we'd have to be paying attention to, and that is this idea, X thousand. So that means that the cost terms are related per thousand calculators, so we also have to make sure that the revenue relates to that idea as well, 12,000 X, okay? Then our cost function, as I said, we're going to have cost, and that's going to equal your fixed cost plus your variable cost. Okay? So we're going to need to add those two together. So our variable cost, we said was 6,995X minus 7.2X squared. And then we're going to add as well our $230,000. So remember, variable costs are those things that change depending on the number of items that you're going to produce, depending on the X. And the fixed costs are those that are fixed and not related to any variables. So they have to be paid regardless of whether you sell or produce any items, okay? So now we can just rearrange this cost equation, and generally we put our highest degree term first. So we've got minus 7.2x squared, and then 6,995x, and then plus 230,000. So that's going to be our cost function and our revenue function. And the last thing we have to find for part A here is the profit. So you're going to remember that profit is a concept that's related to revenue and cost. So the profit is what money is left over once you bring in the revenue and you take out the costs. So we have profit is equal to revenue minus cost. Okay? And I'll go to the next page and we'll look at that. I've just rewritten that last statement, profit equals revenue minus cost. So now we need to put in those functions. We have revenue, remember, was 12,000 X minus, now this is important, we're putting the cost function in brackets to remember that this subtraction applies to each term in the bracket, meaning that we have to subtract each of the terms of the cost, both the variable and the fixed cost. So here we are. So what I mean by that now is this subtraction here applies to this term, it applies to this term, and applies to this term. So if we're going to drop the bracket and collect like terms, we need to be changing the sign of each of these terms. So we can do that first. So that's now going to be plus 7.2x squared. This is now going to be minus 6,995x and minus 230,000. We're going to collect like terms, and the only terms that we can add together are the two x terms. And again, we're going to rearrange the terms from the highest degree to the lowest. So I'm going to have 7.2x squared here. Then I'm subtracting, so 12,000x minus 6,995x, which leaves me with positive 5,005x. And then I'm going to have minus 230,000. Okay, and that's going to be our profit function, and we're ready to go. So if we looked at question 2, or part 2 of the question, it says, what is the profit or loss when 25,000 calculators are sold? So we need to remember that the profit function is per 1,000 calculators. So when we have when we have 25,000 calculators, that's 25,000. So here we're going to substitute x is 25 and solve in the profit function. And if we do that, everywhere we have an x, we're going to be substituting 25. And solving. So the profit when we have sold 25,000 calculators is a negative number. Negative 100,375. So in fact, this is a loss for the company. It's a negative profit, meaning that money is, you're paying out more in cost than you're bringing in revenue. So that's a loss. The next part of question B is to find out what happens when you sell 60,000 calculators. So here again, 60,000. So the profit function is for x thousand. So here x is equal to 60, and we're going to substitute there. Every time you have an x, we're going to substitute 60. Remember your order of operations here too. I should mention that. For example here, you're going to do the squaring first, that's an exponent, and then you're going to multiply by the 7.2. So just be careful of that. If you didn't get the right answer, that might be part of the problem. Okay, so the profit when you're selling 60,000 calculators is positive, so that's good. 96,220, so you've made a profit. So the question asks, what do you notice? So I could say, well, I notice that the more calculators you produce and sell, the greater the profit that the company makes. So you're actually going from a loss to a profit-making situation. It says, why do you think this is so? Well, I think that when you look at this quite substantial fixed cost, when you have more items sold, that fixed cost is distributed over more and more items. So at some point, that fixed cost is overcome by the number of calculators that you sell. Can I make any predictions? I think my prediction might be that, again, the more that you sell, up to the maximum. Remember, the question says that the company can only manufacture up to 150,000. That as you make more, greater than 60,000, up to that maximum of 150,000 calculators, that you're going to see your profit grow. And that would be my prediction.